Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Boundary Breakers. Do we have something awesome planned for you guys today? I'm your host, Piper McLean, and I am joined with an amazing guest audience and speaker today. It is Betty Good, and she is an intergenerational trainer, consultant in Calgary, and she has spent well over 16 years bridging this gap between these two generations. She has co-founded Incredible Living, which has helped people discover their strengths and develop children's books about incredible creatures. And it's been really fantastic to learn more about her. She has also worked as a career counselor in the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association and later became a training lead at Linkages Society of Alberta, promoting intergenerational programs. Welcome, Betty.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you, and it's so good to see you again. So the audience may not know as much about you as I do. So why don't you fill them in a little bit?
Well, I feel like you just did. Yeah, I started my working career as a teacher, and I taught little kids for about 20 years. And then we moved from Ontario to Alberta, and I had 1,000 other careers in between getting back into working with children and then now youth and seniors. What else would you like to know?
What have you been doing in your free time? So I know I mentioned a little bit about your career in linkages, but I don't think that's what you're currently doing right now. So tell the
No.
audience what you're doing these days.
So I worked with Linkages Society of Alberta for over 8 years, and they had been around for 29 years. Mm-hmm. And their focus was connecting youth and seniors or older adults. And that's what I did. I ran programs there, and then I trained other organizations and people how to run intergenerational programs. Mm-hmm. But last fall, they unfortunately, due to lack of funding, they had to close their doors. But I didn't want to close my heart to intergenerational work because I was sold. I was absolutely sold. Mm-hmm. And like somebody that I heard speak once out of Los Angeles, he said, "Show me a problem. Mm-hmm. I'll show you an intergenerational approach." Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my philosophy too, although I don't want to go around solving problems. Mm-hmm. I just want to connect youth and seniors. So in January, I started my own social enterprise. So mm-hmm. what I do is I'm supporting about 5 intergenerational clubs and the university chapter here in Calgary. So I'm doing that voluntarily. I also am the team lead for the intergenerational community of practice across Canada. Mm-hmm. And then to earn a little bit of money to support my habit of connecting youth and seniors, I am continuing to do training. Mm-hmm. So, I do that for organizations across Canada, and also I'm involved. I'm connected with an organization in Scotland called Generations Working Together, where mm-hmm. they offer courses. They offer the International Certificate of Intergenerational Practice a few times a year, and I'm one of their tutors. So basically what I'm doing now is doing what I love, is mm-hmm. intergenerational work, working with youth and seniors, and also helping others to know how to do that.
I think that is so inspiring that something really pulled you in and it made you want to become a mentor in this field. So clearly you've had quite a lot of experience in this intergenerational sort of work. And I don't think it's talked about enough in Calgary because I am also a Calgary local at this point in time. And until we originally spoke to one another, I wasn't aware of, the programs that you've been involved in. So could you tell us a little bit about how this journey of intergenerational work started out for you and what drew you into this field?
Sure. And, when I worked at Linkages, we always said we're the best kept secret, mm-hmm. because you're right. it's not spoken enough. And even now, I will, well, of course, all my friends, I hope they're not getting tired of it, but all my friends know about intergenerational work. But you talk to somebody and you tell them what you're doing, and the majority of people don't really understand what that is. So what happened was I was working at Calgary Immigrant Women's Association, and in 2015, somebody who I used to work for, she used to be a manager. She had, back then, she was working for Linkages, which I had never heard of. But she called me one day and said, I want to go for coffee. Excuse me. And because she was familiar with who I did in my work with immigrant women and with people in general, we went for coffee and she told me what Linkages was all about. And she said, I want you to come and work with me. And I thought about it because I knew all about seniors. I am one, duh. And I have worked with children and young people and young adults and adults my whole life. All of my jobs have always been with people. But I had never even thought about the idea of putting young people and older people together. So after I thought about it, it sounded fascinating. So I took her up on her offer and I started working there full time and running these programs. And I have to be honest, when I started, all the programs were run in a care center, like a long-term care facility. And my naive mind said, oh, isn't this nice? These students are going in to do something nice for the seniors. Well, it didn't take me long to realize the students, the youth, were getting as much out of it as the seniors. And I call it magic. Like we connected the youth and the seniors, and they were together, the same, like two students and one senior. They were together for full 8 months, every week or every other week. And they really bonded. They developed those relationships. And I call it magic because I would just stand back and watch them interact with each other and laugh and have serious conversations. And it was so meaningful. It was magical. So that's what drew me in, and that's what keeps me.
Yeah. And that fire and that passion and seeing that both groups can be affected by this sort of programming. That is kind of the magic of Love Caravan too. And in our experience, so I'm sure you know about our CCVT. When we originally met, I told you about our flagship event, and some of the experiences that we've gotten from that program is how this is such an amazing experience for the youth to see what the lives of seniors are kind of like today, and for seniors to feel more back in their own youth and whatnot. And that's been, so amazing to be part of. So I'm glad that you've had the same sort of impact that we've had here. And I'd love to delve a little bit deeper into the sort of significance behind these sorts of programs. So, being involved as an owner in this sort of enterprise and whatnot, has there been extra stress or challenge that has been involved in your work rather than being just an employee?
You mean with my social enterprise now? Well, when you're an employee, you don't have to market. And so I started this in January, and I have a huge benefit because I've been working in the field for, well, it's 9 years now, but over 8 years. I had made lots of connections. And so it just seemed like a natural transition into starting my own social enterprise. And the connections continued, my partnerships continued, my support of the local clubs. Well, they were programs, we turned them into clubs. That continued, my intergenerational work continued, or the community of practice. So, and also because it's a social enterprise, my focus isn't on creating an income. My focus is on giving and supporting. And whatever income comes in is wonderful, of course, because that helps me to sustain my enterprise. And so far, I have to tell you, I have not had time to do any marketing because people are finding me.
Yeah.
And you probably are aware of this, that intergenerational work in general, even though it's kind of a secret here in Calgary, but it's becoming more known around the world, which is a great thing.
And I'd love to talk a little bit more about, in your experience, why you think it's becoming more prominent in the world. So, like you said, it's a bit of a secret here in Calgary, but people are still finding you. Why is that?
I think it's because people realize that it's not good to live in isolation. There are a lot of cultures in the world where people live with families, small communities, they all interact with each other. There isn't anything like segregation. Okay, seniors go over here and children go over here. But in North America, we're more segregated. And in research has shown that seniors, the major issues that they face is social isolation, depression, like mental health, lack of self-esteem. Guess who else faces those issues? Youth. They are socially isolated. They struggle with mental health and depression and lack of self-esteem. So when you pull these two together, they help each other to address those issues. They may not address them head on, but because of spending time together, it eliminates the social isolation. It gives them a better opportunity at their mental health. They're not, depression diminishes. And their self-esteem grows because they are doing something for somebody else, and also they're receiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that's the selfishness behind good deeds, because it will make you feel better. And you'll think about that, be like, I'm so happy that I went out of my way to do that, because it made them feel good and made me feel good. So why not be involved in things like this, especially if you're going to get a benefit out of it too?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Going in, they don't even realize they're going to benefit, because usually they go in to give, but then they get the benefit, right?
Yeah, that's an after thing where you didn't even think that was an option, and then you're left with such a light, warm presence. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, youth and seniors are so pivotal to your work, to our work. Look at us here, youth brand team, talking to one of the most experienced people in our, local field here. So let's talk a little bit more about youth and seniors and how we can connect. So can you describe the process of transitioning some of the programs that you've had into clubs, and how that has aided in getting some youth involvement in this sort of work?
Yes. So when I worked for Linkages, we had programs, and I would facilitate them. I would go to the schools and recruit the students. I would connect with the care center, or usually care centers. I would connect with them, and then we would bring them together. I would do all the work. I would prepare, provide the activities, facilitate everything. So I was the person doing the work. Then when we realized that we couldn't fund this anymore, we were thinking we needed to close down the programs. But like I said, after you've seen the magic, after you've seen the benefits for the youth and the seniors, I did not want to shut down these programs. So I suggested that we turn them into clubs, so that they could be self-sustaining with my support in the background. So what we did last fall, when we recruited students for the program, I also put out a shout for leaders. And I had an application for student leaders. I said, you leaders are going to have to run this program with my training and my support in the background. And so they had to apply. So in each of our clubs, we have 4 leaders, 4 students who are the leaders. And then and we'll do this again this next school year, they all come together on that full day on Saturday to be trained how to lead this program, how to facilitate each session, how to prepare to complete so that they could run the program. But then what also makes it successful is that in each school, there's a teacher. That's their support. That they're not doing it all by themselves. And then in the care center, there's usually the recreational therapist. That is a support because they have to be there with the residents. And then in the community center, there's a person there's somebody assigned in the community center, or one of our programs is in the church. So it's one of the ministers in the church. That's the support from their end. And then they have my support as well. So that's what makes it successful, is the whole team. Yeah.
And this multi-factor support system, you're going to get so many different collective ideas all in one place from these different groups and, demographics of people. That's kind of doing some of this facilitation of different ideals and voices for itself. What an intriguing idea.
Isn't that great? And also, the 4 students that were accepted to be leaders, look at the leadership skills they're learning.
Yeah. Exactly. And how much is that going to be transferable to other things in the future? And, since they have had this exposure to intergenerational programming so young, they might have a different outlook and perspective on their work going forward in the future as they age too.
That's a good point, because quite a few students that have come through our programs have either chosen or changed. If they changed, that they still chose. They chose their career goals in health, in gerontology, in a field that they would not have been interested in before they were involved with intergenerational work.
And what is the significant impact you think that brought a little bit of relatability and made them kind of change their opinion and want to be involved in this work going forward?
Well, one person, he's in medicine right now. And he said when he was matched up with an older adult in the care center, and the older adult had dementia, not late stage, but had dementia. And he found that fascinating, that he could have a relationship with this person. And then in Calgary, there's a care center where all the residents have mid to late dementia. So he started volunteering there. And because of that, he's studying to do research for Alzheimer's and dementia. And so there's that. Then another gal when she was in grade 12, she thought she would be going to SAIT I think she was going to do something with technology. But the last day of our program, we had our wrap-up party, and she stayed behind and helped me tidy up. And I said, "Oh, so what are your plans? What are you doing next year?" And she told me what her initial plan was, but she said, "After being part of this program, I'm going into healthcare." I think they realize that, first of all, they have no ageism. After you hang out with an older person, how can you be ageist? She learned to love the older people, and she began to have a caring heart for them. And that's just 2 stories. Yeah.
And imagine the impact that other people in this program have had that, didn't share their story, just their outlook on their everyday life, their
Exactly.
mental state. Like, it's totally going to be affected by work like that. And I think this is a common misconception in today's society. The seniors not getting what the kids are up to these days with the lingo and the technology, or, the youth not being able to relate to what seniors are doing in their lives. And, we're not living in the exact same society as, you guys grew up in. So what do you think some of these misconceptions are, and why do you think that they are, that's why they are not exactly true?
Well, they don't understand each other. When you talk with an older person, often you hear, well, in my day, we walked to school. They don't understand the risks that young children face in walking to school these days. So there's lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. And younger people, I don't know, they don't understand older people. And by not understanding, when you don't understand, you tend to criticize and judge. And so if they see an older person walking a little slower, wishing they would walk faster in front of them in the mall, they don't understand. And so by putting them together and letting them know each other, getting them to develop those relationships, what they find is they actually have things in common. One program that I did once, it was all about music with people with dementia. And the high school students had to find, it was a research project we did for the University of Lethbridge. So the young people had to find music that the older people listened to or were interested in. And so through this program, and I facilitated, I would go from table to table. And I remember I went to this one table, and the senior woman, she said she had asked the high school student what she was interested in, and she listened to her music too. And what they told me is they liked the same music. And if you told a teenager that you would like their music, they wouldn't believe it. But it's getting to know each other. It's developing that relationship.
And thank you for bringing up this point, Betty, because that is one of our foundations as to why we started this program here at LC, because there are ways to connect people who are seemingly have nothing in common, but that is not true. We love music, we love art, we love visual, audio, physical stimulants, we love performance, and all of these different sorts of artist sort of creative aspects is something that everyone can find common ground with, even if it's not like your taste. Like, if I was into something morbid and you were more into something light, at the end of the day, we still both have an interest in listening to this sort of art and magic. So, there are things that can bring us to that common ground and allow us to, establish greater discourse. So, we, in our CCBT, we will host events in different senior homes, right? And we'll bring in some local artists, and we'll do performances. And then you can meet up with some of the youth volunteers and say, like, oh, I really enjoyed this piece. What'd you like about it? Oh, well, my favorite color is red. And then that completely bridges into a whole different conversation. So I'm right there with you on that point, Betty. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Good Links. I think this is a really great program, and since it's going on currently, I think it's worth delving deeper into. So, what would you say, as it is your social enterprise, is at the heart of community practice, and how does it align Good Links' intergenerational future goal with our community today?
Okay, well, my goal is connecting youth and seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sorry, I use seniors and older adults intermittent, I find even if you connect two or four or a whole group like I do in my programs, it organically impacts the community. Let me tell you a story about a few years ago, quite a few years ago. We wanted to go, a care center called and said, we want a program. So I went to the school, it was kindergarten to grade 9. Okay, so I went to the principal and I said, told her what we do, asked if, gave her the opportunity for the junior high students to get involved because we only worked with junior high and high school. Well, the principal came back and she said, I talked to the staff, do you think we could do a grade 4?
Mm-hmm.
And usually my response is, why not? Like just because we've never done it before doesn't mean it can't be done.
Exactly.
So we did that. We had a program where the grade 4s went and spent time with the seniors. And remember, the students always were with the same senior. And in May, after our wrap-up party, this one boy, he went home and he said to Mom, you mean I can't see June anymore? Well, they were within walking distance of the care center, which means they lived in that community. And so the mom went to the care center and met June, and June became part of their family. And so this young boy was part of it because then the next year the teacher moved to grade 5. So we did grade 5s. He was part of that program for 2 years. And then for some reason we moved out of there. He wasn't in the program anymore because he moved up to grade 6. But June stayed part of their family and was Wyatt's special friend. June was invited for Christmas, for birthdays. They took her, she was just part of the family. And a year, I think maybe it was a year and a half ago, June passed away. And Wyatt had been with her for something like 7 years. They had been friends. So isn't that, and I can't remember where I'm going with this, but it just shows the impact. It didn't just impact June and Wyatt, it impacted the whole family. And when I sat down and talked with June and asked her about it, I said, do you have family in Calgary? She said, oh yeah. But now she had 2 families. Yeah. And having an intergenerational friendship with a non-kin, like the dynamics change. Think of your relationship with your grandmother. But then if you have an older woman who's in your life that's not your grandmother, it's totally different. And it's so positive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was always the kid that was, making friends with my friends' parents or with my teachers. And it's like, I would stay in to chit chat with them at lunch and stuff because it's just so interesting hearing about their experiences. It really is like they've lived completely different lives from our own, completely different experiences, and grew up in a completely different time. Even that in itself is so interesting. That's history. That's actual lived in knowledge.
And that's enriched your life, Piper. Because look at what you're doing now. That may have had an impact. I don't know. I'm not interviewing you, so I can't ask you all these questions. But being really curious which I can't imagine you being outgoing and curious, but but being really curious and finding out about other people's lives, it just enriches your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that there are so many different ways to further your own mind, knowledge, and education. And a
Yeah.
lot of that is through, oral discussions and whatnot. And, to go back and to dive into some indigenous heritage, oral teaching is something that is still, widely practiced and is passed down from generation to generation before books were established, before modern
Yeah.
sort of schooling and classes were established. So
Yeah.
this is something that has been proven to, help keep these stories alive.
Totally. Storytelling.
Exactly. And the impact of a story, that's why I love doing these episodes so much and hearing the different stories that our speakers come and bring. Like that is so enriching to me. And I hope it is the same to the audience as well. Okay. So to touch a little bit on, people keep finding you. So you haven't had to be, involved as much in marketing as, maybe you would have if people weren't stumbling across your program. So, how have you been able to establish and create awareness for intergenerational causes? And what are some strategies that you've implemented to do so?
Okay, well, excuse me, I'll have to refer back to when I worked for linkages because how did I create awareness? There,
Mm-hmm.
we often offered free webinars.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so I was working for linkages, but I'm also involved. I'm also the lead person for the team for the intergenerational community of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so through that, lots of people get to know me.
Yeah.
And through that, we create awareness. And so our own free webinars through linkages and also through the community of practice. For example, one webinar that we hosted was why intergenerational? Because people may have heard of it, but just to tell them, just to make them aware and educate them about why intergenerational work is important. And then also through the community of practice, we connect with lots and lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you say about people finding me, a lot of it is word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, recently, Families Canada, they were going to host a webinar with a panel about how to have intergenerational programs with people with dementia. And because I've had that experience, they were looking for somebody like me because they knew they could tap into Alzheimer's Society. But somebody who they knew said, have you contacted Betty Good? And so word of mouth, when more people in the intergenerational field, and you probably find this too, when you work with more and more people who are interested in this field, it just filters out.
Uh-huh.
It ripples. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is because we are such a, small, closer knit and growing sort of demographic. So, we find our like minded
Yeah.
groups, individuals, and organizations, and it kind of just goes from there. So, I think that, idea of transferring our contacts to one another and seeing who can help who, that
Yeah.
is what's going to be really beneficial in establishing greater societal intergenerational programs. All right. So I've got a little bit of an activity plan for us in between some of our questions. And it's kind of going to dive into some of the storytelling impact that we were just talking about. So why don't we dive right into that? I'll share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see what I got up on the screen?
I can.
Okay, so one of our lovely event planners put this together, and it is a version of categories. So, how we're going to play, you are going to choose a letter from A to J, and I'm going to go to that sort of section. And we're each going to pick a word and talk about what it means to us and share a personal experience that we have with this word. So, starting us off, Betty, what letter from A to J would you like to jump into?
How about G?
Okay, perfect. So these
No,
are out.
G, like good.
Oh, yes. Here we go. Okay, here we go. All right. Any of these words jumping out at you, Betty?
Giving.
Okay. So, what does giving mean to you? And what's an experience you got about it?
Well, I love people.
Mhm.
I love helping people. I love giving of myself. And an experience that I would like to share is about 10, no, 12 years ago now. I started mentoring a young gal, a young single mom. And I give of my time. I'm her friend. We do things together. If she wants my advice, I always have advice, but try not to give it unless I'm asked. And so, you know what? Here we are, 12 years later. We are still friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all because I gave of myself to help her.
Mm-hmm. 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 And, the act of giving, yes, it usually starts out one sided, but what has she been able to give you in this relationship, or anything else that she's been able to provide for you?
You know, that's a great question. She is so appreciative. And, you know, you've probably had this experience where you give, but you don't feel that people really appreciate. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not really why you do it, but that's the benefit. That's what you get back is being appreciated and being valued. And it helps your own sense of self-esteem and self-confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. We were talking about that boosting effect that, being
Yeah,
involved in giving back actually has. And you're totally right.
totally.
It is confidence building. It is completely immune boosting. I'm so with you on that, Betty. Okay, I think I'm going to go for C. Okay, collaboration. My immediate thought about collaboration is the process of, reaching out to different individuals from all different backgrounds just for this program, meeting with them, and the discussions that we have, as I'm sure you know, because we kind of did the same sort of thing, is amazing. The ideas we're able to put together and experience sharing. And there's so many amazing things that come from just collective thinking and collective discourse. And that is something that I love so much about being involved in LC and with this program is that I get to see behind the window into a bunch of different people's lives. And it's moving. It's really moving to hear other people's, thoughts and what they've been through. And it'll help you change your perspective on your own outlook on life. So, collaborating with others, collectivity, this program, that's kind of what we do. And it's really amazing for people to take a chance on one another and see what they can create together. Totally. All right. Did you have any experience with collaboration that you think could be good to bring up in this conversation?
Well, it's interesting you chose that word because I would have two. I'm an extrovert
Mm-hmm.
and I prefer working with people rather than working by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's, for example, when my children were young, I didn't want to clean the house all by myself, so I just recruited them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We collaborated, or if they had to clean their room, pick up all their toys, that's daunting for a little kid. We collaborated and did it together. And I'm the same way now. When I'm working on a project, even though it could be for my social enterprise, I still like to include people and get their input. And and for example, with the clubs, with the students, and then we collaborate with the community center and with the school, with the liaisons there. And so I just find you're just better together, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And even if it is a everyday task, like you were saying, cleaning the house, putting your toys away, it is so much more motivating to do something with other people there. Like I
Yeah.
know me personally, I get so cranky when I'm like cleaning the house. I'm on my hands and knees around the toilet. Like I'm in such an awful mood. But the second someone else steps in, you're like, you know what? Maybe I could turn this, monotonous and, negative task into a fun hangout sort of thing.
Maybe I can come and help you. You said you live in Calgary now.
we are around the same area, so I'll give you that same offer. Let's totally collaborate again, Betty.
Clean each other's toilets, right?
I bet yours would be cleaner than mine. Let me just say that.
Oh.
All right, so let's do another one, Betty. I'll allow you the honors of choosing what letter we go to.
Well, how about B? We'll just use my initials.
Okay, perfect.
I like all of them. I'm going to say being present.
Okay.
Because I do not like it when I'm with somebody and they're checking their texts and responding while we are together.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I make it a point that when I'm with somebody, I am present with them. Mm-hmm. And so my phone is on silent and mm-hmm. in my bag. And whatever we're doing, I am there with that person and for that person. Mm-hmm. And that's important in every relationship. But I have 5 grandchildren, 4 of them are teenagers. And when I am with them, they have my full attention because that makes them feel valued. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And even that act of being present, it goes beyond even just the phones. My mom is even a huge phoner, and she's like, I don't even know what generation she be. She's almost 50, so whatever generation that is. And so she's big on the phone, but it's also, a bit disheartening to have a conversation with someone and their head is in somewhere else. They're having anxiety about something else. Like, obviously, the financial situation right now is not ideal for a lot of people. And that's not really something that we have the ability to change as, us individuals. Maybe if we band together, but there's so much stress on, oh my God, like, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I can afford that, which is totally valid. But that anxiety is so all encompassing. And having your headspace somewhere else is difficult for you, and it's difficult for the people around you. I know it's going to be hard to separate from that sometimes, but sometimes you got to just stay in the positive, because when you think about the negative all the time, that's going to be what consumes you.
Yeah, good point.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody is struggling with distractions, mm-hmm. then if we're with them, it's even more important for us to be present.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because imagine if they're in a difficult headspace. Oops.
Yeah.
And then you are kind of distracted in what you're doing, that's only going to pull them further down that hole.
Yeah.
Totally. Exactly. All right. So what'd you think of that game, Betty?
I loved it. I love it.
I'm glad you did. Yeah. Shout out to Lillian. That was all her mind child. Okay. So let's move on to one of our final sections of the day. And while we are having this conversation, if anyone's got any questions in the chat for our upcoming Q&A, please send them our way so that Betty could address those. Okay, so back to our final subtopic of the day, collaborating with youth. In your experience, what are some of the underlying issues that youth face that discourage them from reaching out for help when they really need it?
That's a really good question, and I'm not an expert by any means. So I'm just going to kind of guess. I think if a lot of, well, just none of this is research, it's my personal opinion. But I think if a young person is struggling, doesn't want to reach out for help, is it because they've reached out for help before and haven't received it? Is it because they don't come from a very supportive family? Is it because they've been bullied or they've been put down in other ways? Or I don't know. I just think it's not because they don't want help, but maybe they've been rejected and they don't want to be rejected again.
Rejection, everyone has faced a little bit of rejection, no matter in what sort of relationship or situation it has been. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't make you want to step out of your comfort zones again, just to face those same feelings that you have in the past. And I think that is definitely something that's going to come into play. I also think that, sort of pushing people away from reaching out for help is something that our society doesn't really aid in. If anything, it kind of keeps that sort of energy going, because individualism, independence are things that are very pivotal, at least in our Western society, right? So, it's like, I shouldn't bother someone with, asking for help if I could figure it out myself. I've got the internet, I've got resources, I could figure it out. But not all things you should have to figure out by yourself. We're here, we're energetic and connective beings. But that is definitely something I've definitely heard a lot of people, especially young people, sort of relate to those sorts of feelings. So I think that is definitely something that is widespread and, kind of perpetuated today in the discourse.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about some of these underlying issues stopping people from reaching out. What are some factors that you think influence youth to embrace their self journey to becoming leaders? And, how can other people help out, with creating the leaders of tomorrow?
Ooh, you have good questions. So how come youth embrace that? I think, and here again, the formative years, the family that you grew up with, not just your immediate family, but extended family, the positive input that you have had in your life from other people, intergenerational, like if you get another older adult or even another adult involved in your children's lives, if you're a youth, if you get those involved in your life, you have people that believe in you, that encourage you, that support you, that will motivate you and influence you to want to be a better person. Not everybody wants to be a leader. Not everybody should be a leader, but find out what your strengths are, and then you can pursue that and just be a better you.
Yeah. And, that positive affirmation, that is all it takes for some people to really step into, their own and into their confidence. And my oldest brother, he is someone who personally is definitely, a little bit self-conscious and whatnot. And positive affirmation, from his coaches would have taken him those extra steps. Like he was this, he's a really big guy. And he used to play on Team Canada when he was younger for hockey.
Wow.
And like he was very talented. But his coach was not, the sort of compliments, positive affirmations guy. He was more of a hypercritical, make you hate yourself type of guy. So that kind of kept him from pursuing what used to be a dream of his, because he just felt so negative around the sport and the passion after that. So you don't know how a positive or a negative phrase or sentence or comment is going to stick with someone for the rest of their lives. So if you could implement more kind things that you could say, that makes all the difference.
I agree. That's too sad about your brother. But it's a good reminder for us that no matter what, you can find something positive about the person you're with, no matter how negative they are. You can find something positive about the situation. And like my father used to say, if you can't say something nice, don't say it. We've probably all heard that. And that's so true, because we never know what one word from our mouth, how that will influence the person we're talking to. Yeah.
Exactly. And since we're all different, things are going to impact us in a different way. If someone like in passing was like, Piper, like, you're a bit of an idiot. I might not take that to heart, but someone else will. And that is all they're going to think about. And it's like, well, why would I even try? People are just going to think I'm stupid.
Yeah. Good point.
Right. So you never know what's going to stick.
Yeah.
Positive or negative. Okay. I'm going to ask, I think, one more question before we get into a bit of a Q&A. So how can adults of the community represent a positive image that youth can look up to?
Well, sometimes you hear older adults criticize the youth. So how can they represent a positive image? Think of what you want those young people to do, or to be like, and do that or be like that. And also like represent, but also say positive things to them.
Yeah, exactly. And you go.
My favorite thing is, so I live in an apartment building, and 99 times out of 100, when I walk out the front door, if there is somebody in front of me, they will hold the door. And I always make it a point to say thank you. But if there's a kid holding the door, like a young person or like an 8-year-old, I just kind of make a big deal of it. If there's a young child holding the door, I'll look at them and I'll say, well, thank you. You are so thoughtful, or you are so kind. And you know what? Hopefully they can hear that they're kind, not just a thank you, but that they're kind and they're thoughtful. And you don't know what that'll do in their little minds, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, if they see that, holding the door for other people is, makes me feel good because they say all these nice things to me and there's excitement, that might stick and, might become a habitual sort of manner that they have. Okay.
And it'll make them feel like they're kind.
Exactly. Exactly. And it feels good to
totally
feel kind. Exactly. All right. So we've got a couple messages in the chat. And I'd like to let you know that there is someone watching the show today that loved volunteering for you and has been so exciting watching us kind of
Oh,
in this episode today.
oh, wow. Thank you. I know you
Mhm.
can't say their name, but I would love to know. Thank you for those kind words, whoever you are.
And we've also got a couple questions. So you've mentioned that being an extrovert is preferring the company of others. And this person claims that they are the same, but to an extreme, that they literally cannot be home alone or alone, period. How can you feel okay alone?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. And I used to be like that. And I used to be a life coach, so I could spend an hour with you helping you with that. But I would say find, I don't know if you journal. If you do, it's really helped me. Make a list of all the things that you like about yourself. Be really positive about yourself. And when you're alone, make that list, read them over. I don't know how to give a 2-minute answer, but learn to love yourself and think of yourself as your own friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I have to be out with people every day, but I'm totally okay sitting on my couch, watching a movie or reading a book by myself when I'm home, because I live by myself, because now I really like myself. So I'm generalizing, maybe work on loving yourself and then think of the things that you can do by yourself, not being lonely, but just being alone, that you wouldn't do with other people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for, kind of bringing up such a significant point, Betty. Loneliness versus being alone. So I I'm obviously at least extroverted in the sense that I'm good at connecting with people. I love talking with people. But growing up, I am not the same person I am when I am this person that's presenting, right? And I've always like loved being alone. Even though I love being out and doing things with other people,
Yeah.
I love my time like with myself, and I love myself um and my own company. So that's definitely something that I haven't, you know, struggled with. But I've wondered, it's like, why have I always enjoyed, just hanging out by myself? So you mentioned that there are some people that are extroverted, introverts, and whatnot. And I'd say maybe I fit into that sort of category. But yeah, we all have our own different sort of vices, right? So I think that's really good advice to sort of turn loneliness into loving being alone in your own company. I think that's really good advice. Okay, so I've got another question for you, Betty. Who is someone from your experience, your network, something like that, that you think would be a great person to have on the show and that they would have something significant to say?
That's a really good question. I'm working on a project right now. It's a contract for somebody else. And it's called Aging Well Chronicles. And I have interviewed 7 people in Calgary, older adults who are really active in their community. And when I interviewed them, and then my partner who's doing the project with me, she's the one that's doing all the photo shooting and videography.
Mm-hmm.
And these 7 people that I've interviewed, I have just loved listening to their stories And so I would say any one of them would be awesome to have on your show if you're looking for older adults.
I think it'd be amazing to have more older adults because I kind of, as the host, make up that youth representation. So speaking with more, older adults, as you say, would be amazing for this program. So I think that'd be a really great connection to make.
So I've got 7 names, and you know what, if you want to contact me privately, I can recommend a few or tell you, you know, what their interests are to see if that kind of triggers a thought for you.
Okay, perfect. And thank you so much for, graciously offering that. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to get in touch with them and with you about that. All right. Let's hear some final words of advice, Betty. What is something we either didn't get to or didn't hash out enough that you think would be useful for the seniors, for the, the middles, and for the youth to hear? What is some advice you got?
Okay, here we go. Make a friend. Make a friend with someone of another generation. Get to know them, hang out with them, do things. And a pet peeve of mine is people who don't listen well. So make a friend, be curious, listen, but also share of yourself. So just make a friend of somebody from the other generation. It will enrich your life and it will enrich theirs.
And you're so right. And you don't know how long lasting that friendship is going to be. Like thinking back on the story, young guy in school, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, 7 years beyond that with June. Like what an amazing, I think you said his name was Wyatt. What an amazing sort of story. So yeah, I am all for creating friends, especially in places you wouldn't expect to, like the grocery store, the Tim's lineup, when you could easily look around and connect with the people that are in your space rather than being all in your own space. Yeah.
Oh, and another thing, like not everybody is outgoing, so you may not want to talk to the person who's in line at Tim's with you. But another thing, if you're older, maybe start mentoring a younger person. And if you're a younger person, find someone older than you who you admire and you think, wow, I like the qualities in that person, and go and ask them to be your mentor.
And do you think people should approach this sort of mentoree and mentor sort of relationship with an idea in mind? Like if I was looking into, welding, should I reach out to, the experienced people who have, been welding for longer than I've been alive?
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's great. Yeah.
And it'd be easier to connect with people if you have that sort of target rather than just general, sort of outreaching in that sort of way.
Well, and it doesn't have to be as specific as welding. The person who asked the question about how do I get to the point where I don't mind being alone, find somebody who is well-rounded and you just like the way that they live their life. And then that's personal growth. If you want to grow personally, find someone who you admire in that area. And then just by hanging out with them, you'll grow personally.
Yeah, great point. Great points. Because, I heard this, I don't remember where I heard it from, but you shouldn't take advice from someone whose life you wouldn't want to live. So if you're looking for that sort of mentorship or advice or just sort of guidance, that's why you should look to the people you admire, to the people that are inspiring to you. And you're like, I would love to live like that person.
Yeah.
Totally. So, we've shared some stories, we played a couple of games, and we've talked about creating better intergenerational connections with us like-minded people here in our local areas. So if you guys haven't picked up on this, me and Betty are both located in the Calgary area. So if anyone else out there in Calgary is looking to, get more involved with some intergenerational programming, please reach out to Love Caravan or Betty and see, if we can have a conversation and whatnot and see where we can take it. But I hope that, everyone out there, you've been able to take some of this experience and see how it applies to your own life. Or, those of you who may just have come to enjoy a conversation, there's been that too. So I'd love to thank everybody here for coming and being part of this conversation today, and all of the sweet comments that we've gotten in our chat box. But most of all, I'd love to thank you, Betty, for coming on our show today.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I love this. Also, have you made my contact information available for the participants?
So I'm pretty sure we ended up getting a hold of your social media, but if you are comfortable with that, I can totally put your email somewhere available as well.
Sure.
Okay.
And if they want to contact me on social media, that's fine too.
Okay, perfect. So you guys heard it here. Email and social media that will be available to reach Betty. And yeah, she's got the experience in this and has some mentorship experience as well. So she's definitely one of the ladies you'd want to reach out to if you're, interested in this sort of thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Catch you in the next one. Okay, Aiden, let us know when we are